Here we go, the game is starting. I have the black pieces, and my opponent opens with this rather strange move, knight c3. I'm going to play the pawn to d5, and as you can see, there's no rating displayed because I'm playing in a special mode called Zen mode on the Lichess playing area. So what exactly is this mode? Well, quite simply, you don't see your opponent's rating during the game, but at the end of the game, their rating is revealed to you, so there's this little surprise. My opponent plays pawn to e3, so I'm going to play pawn to e5 and establish a strong pawn center. Since my opponent isn't contesting the center, I'm playing to establish myself there. And now he's being aggressive, bringing out his queen to attack the pawn on e5. Of course, I could play knight to c6 to defend it, but maybe that's what he's waiting for, because then he'll play bishop to b5 to develop, attack my knight, pin it, and renew the threats against the e5 pawn. So I can try to defend the e5 pawn differently, notably with bishop to d6. But then my queen will no longer defend the d5 pawn, which his knight is attacking. So it's interesting what he's doing right now. How am I going to solve the problem of protecting the e5 pawn? I can't push it forward because, of course, he would take the d5 pawn. I can't play f6 to defend because my pawn is pinned. It opens the diagonal towards my king. So it's not that easy to defend. Maybe queen to d6. To keep defending f5 and d5. Queen d6, he'll probably play knight f3 to keep attacking. And it's always the same. As soon as I want to play knight c6, he'll have bishop b5 with the pin. On the other hand, after queen d6, knight f3, I can play knight d7. That way, after bishop b5, I have the move c6. I couldn't play knight d7 right away because that would lose the d5 pawn. That's why I need to move my queen first. And if I manage to defend the pawn on e5 and the pawn on d5, later I'll play knight f6 to push his queen back. However, after queen d6, there's the problem of knight b5, where he'll attack my queen, my pawn, and the e5 pawn is still under attack. So after queen d6, knight b5, I have to go to e7 to defend everything. His opening is strange, but it still creates problems. All right, I'll play queen d6. Let's see what happens. Obviously, when you have the pawn center, as I do, your opponent will do everything to destroy it. So he just played knight b5. Now queen e7. I'm defending the pawn on e5 and the pawn on c7, which he's attacking right now. He plays knight f3 to attack, but now I can play knight c6 because he doesn't have the move bishop b5. And I can't play knight d7 because then he could take the c7 pawn. The queen would no longer be defending it. So you still have to be precise in this opening. I play knight c6. I can push his knight back with the s6 pawn, but what interests me here is playing knight f6 to push his queen back, to defend the d5 pawn if his knight ever comes back to c3 to attack. My queen on e7 is blocking my bishop's movement. Here he plays a 3, I don't know why. Maybe he's afraid that I might play knight before myself to attack the c2 pawn. I play knight f6, pushing his queen back. Now he's looking for squares. He has to be careful because I have my bishop's diagonal. The squares for his queen are h4 or g5. He doesn't have any others. There you go. He chooses g5. I can still attack the queen with the move h6, but he can simply retreat to the g3 square. I'll still go ahead and check just to see if I can't catch his queen. Because he did bring out his queen a bit recklessly in the opening phase, which is generally not recommended. I want to see if I can take advantage of that early queen move. You have to try to make him pay for that. So if I play knight h5, I'll attack his queen. My queen will control the h4 square. But after h6, queen to g3, knight to h5, he can still come to h4. Because if I exchange queens, his knight is able to recapture. So this attack on the queen with h6, queen to g3, and knight to h5 isn't satisfactory. Because he comes to h4 and I can't really play g5, he would simply take the knight on h5. But after h6, if he comes to g3, maybe the move knight to e4 is possible. But he still has access to that h4 square and he can use it whenever necessary. But this time I would have the g5 push. If he sacrifices, I can recapture with the knight or the queen. Well, not with the queen because then he could take on c7 afterwards, so actually with my knight. So I'm going to play h6, queen to g3, knight to e4, and I feel like his queen won't have any squares left after queen to h4 and g5. He'll have to sacrifice his knight. So let's go with h6. Now he comes to h4, and I can't play that g5 push because this time, if he takes and I recapture, I lose my rook. The problem is that after I push g5 and he captures, if I take back, my rook is left undefended and is lost. So I have to be careful and avoid making that move, since it would result in a material loss. I still need to calculate g5, knight takes, knight to e4. I'm attacking his knight twice and it's pinned. But his knight can come back to f3 to protect his queen. So he didn't fall into the trap by going to g3, he goes to h4. Maybe I should just continue developing with g6, put the bishop on g7 and prepare to castle kingside. g6, if I play knight to g5, I still can't take his knight because of my rook. But after g6, if I play knight to g5, I'll just play bishop to g7, and then I'll be threatening to take his knight. On the other hand, g6 doesn't work. He can play knight takes e7 check to deflect my queen, and then take the knight on f6. So I'm going to play a6 first. I play a6 first to push his knight back. You see how careful you have to be because my opponent isn't playing a conventional opening. He's clearly not playing the best moves in the opening, but he keeps putting on pressure, and in the end, he forces me to find the right defensive move every time. So he brought his knight back to c3, now I can play g6. I can also look at attacking moves, for example, pawn to d4. If he takes, I recapture while attacking the knight, and opening the file to attack his king and check him. Now, after the push to d4, he's not obliged to take. He could even play knight to e4, for example, because if I take, the queen recaptures. I'm not sure if it's the right moment to play d4, actually. I prefer to play g6 here. Bishop to g7, short castle. We're just going to finish developing while keeping control of the center. The center is still under pressure, though. The knight attacks, my knight defends. The other knight attacks, my knight and my queen defend. But I also mustn't forget about these direct lines between his queen and mine. But for now, everything is under control. He plays b4, he's going to want to put the bishop on b2. The b4 push can also prepare b5. In that case, he will recapture with his knight, which is the most logical move in this situation. So my next move is to play bishop to g7, placing my bishop on that square to put pressure on his king side. In response, he plays pawn to b5, advancing his pawn on the queen side to challenge my position. After seeing this move, I take on b5, capturing the pawn and opening up the b file for my pieces. He recaptures with the knight. He's going to put on some pressure. No, he recaptures with the bishop. So now he's pinning my knight to renew threats on e5. But my queen is defending e5, but I don't really want him to be able to break up my pawn structure. So I think I'm going to play bishop to d7, or else I'm still looking for a way to win his queen. Because after all, now on g5, if he takes, I can recapture with the pawn. My bishop is protecting the rook. So g5. He only has the g3 square, he doesn't have any others. On the g3 square now, I have knight to h5, I attack his queen, and this time I really think she's trapped. Because he won't be able to take the e5 pawn. My bishop is there. My knight is pinned, so I couldn't if I recapture with the queen without her being able to recapture. The difference is that my bishop is there. So g5, if he takes, I recapture and my rook attacks the queen. So on g5, maybe the best thing he can do is play knight takes, pawn takes, and then recapture with the queen, attacking my bishop. Well, I could move my bishop. I could even play bishop to h6, attacking his queen. I have ways to play. But after g5, queen to g3, knight to h5, then he has no more squares, so I play g5. So his opening isn't conventional. You can clearly see that bringing out his queen like that isn't part of opening theory, but he's putting on pressure. He's created threats over several moves, so I had to deal with those threats, block his attacks, and then take advantage of his premature queen development. Now he hasn't sacrificed anything, so after knight to h5, I don't know what he has planned. The knight attacks the dark square, the pawn controls the dark squares, and the bishop is in charge of defending the light squares. Maybe he planned to take on e5, but my knight's move freed up the bishop. He plays knight takes d5. He's counterattacking without my queen. That's interesting. I hadn't seen that, but I'm going to win a bit of material. If I take his queen and he takes mine, I can take his rook. So now I take his queen. He will likely want to take on c6. If I take his rook, he plays knight takes, then we take bishop takes with the fork. So knight takes rook, he plays knight takes. And here I can play bishop to d7, I don't actually have to take. I can play bishop to d7 to attack his knight again and pin it because his bishop is hanging. So I take his rook, and after the knight takes the other knight, I do not immediately recapture the pawn. Instead, I am going to play my bishop to d7. He can take on e5, but then he has the problem of the capture on b5. There will also be ideas based on pushing e4, which attacks the knight and opens up the diagonal for my bishop, even if he can come to d4. After that, it will depend on whether I'll be able to push the pawn to c5 to attack his knight. We'll see. So we both have our problems. My knight won't be able to get out, but he has an issue with his own knight and the pin here. So he plays knight takes e5 as expected, and I'm going to take his bishop. So I have an extra piece, but my knight can't get out. It's true that I also have the advantage in material. I have 2 rooks against 1. The problem is that he has won some pawns. He has 7 pawns and I only have 5. So my knight might be able to take one as it tries to get out. He plays pawn to d3. But I have the move g4, which is interesting. I'm attacking his knight, which is defending the other one. He played d3 to prevent my bishop from controlling the f1 square and to allow his king to come attack my knight. But this move g4 is going to be interesting because if he takes with the knight, he loses the rook. And after g4, if he moves the knight, he loses this one. So g4 is interesting. All right, let's play it. So I'm attacking the knight. The other one is also under attack, and the rook is in my sights. And for now, going after my knight takes him a lot of time. Way too much. A pretty unusual game in the opening. It's still quite rare for a player to bring out their queen so quickly. But unlike other players, he put a lot of pressure on me because there are players who bring out the queen, put on a bit of pressure, but crack quickly. He held out for several moves before cracking though. So he took on g4 and bishop takes rook, but now the position is completely lost for him. There's just way too much material in my favor now. So he's going to come after my knight, and I don't have much time left. I'm actually going to have to, play a bit faster than I have been so far, to be honest. I'll go ahead and play the move of 5 here. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure if this is a good move or not, but the main idea is to make him play a little bit, to see how he responds. Now he comes to e5, so at this point I can take, but then he'll just take back. It's a bit of a back and forth situation, and I'm curious to see how it develops from here. Maybe I'll play f6 again to attack his knight. I'd really like him to come to c4 so I can take and ruin his pawn structure, actually. He could come to g6, but I'll go attack him, and I think he'll go back to f4. He's attacking my rook. So my rook comes here. And he defends, he's attacking my pawn again. I can't really defend my pawn here. That's definitely not good news for me. So I'll try to attack his other pawn instead. And I'll go for a counterattack on c2. So he goes there. If I play bishop to c2, he'll play knight to e1. I'll play rook to d8. My idea is that if he takes the d5 pawn, the d3 pawn will be hanging. But I have to be careful. He has forks on f6, but the bishop is defending. I don't have much time left. I'm going to have to play faster. He's coming to get it. All right, bishop here. I attack his knight to try to take his d3 pawn. If he takes, pawn takes, his knight is still under attack. So after considering his options, he comes to d5, and then I attack once again. For now, all the squares are controlled by my bishop. On c3, on c7, he doesn't have any interesting checks. He can come to b4 to protect the d3 pawn, though. No, he comes to b6, he attacks my bishop. I go to c2, I attack the pawn. He's going to play d4. I'll play bishop to c7. Bishop to c7. His knight has no more squares. He can defend with knight to c5, but I'll be able to take out his knight. And now I'm going to play knight to c5 to open up the position. If he takes rook to d1, we'll force mate. He'll move the knight back, and I'll take the knight to checkmate. So I take here. He'll probably recapture with the knight to attack my bishop. I put the bishop here. I attack his knight, so I can then take the pawn on d4. And there's the pawn on g2. That's interesting. If the knight moves, watch out for the capture on g2. He can play knight to h4 or knight to e1, but for example, knight to d2, he can't. Well, now it's going to be pretty easy to win. At one point I was watching my time and with the slightest mistake, so I got a bit scared. So I take on d4 and threaten rook to d1 mate. The pawn on g2 is pinned. Maybe he'll play h3 to give his king an escape square. But rook to d1 will still win the bishop. He can't avoid everything. We're going to take his bishop. He still isn't resigning. I wonder what his rating is. You can give your predictions in the comments below if you would like to share your thoughts. Your evaluation is important. What rating do you think he has? Please let us know, and we'll see together. We're about to find out the answer very soon. So he plays f3, making his move on the board. Let's watch closely and see what happens next. I don't even know exactly where to go from here, so I think I'll just go to c6 for now. Knight to f5. Wait, does he have any possible forks in this position? Let me think about that for a moment. I don't see any forks. I'll play rook to c2 to attack the pawn. I'm also threatening f3 since the g2 pawn is pinned. He plays knight to e3, so he's attacking my rook. We'll move back because he's attacking my rook while defending g2. So we retreat, we attack a3, and we're still threatening f3. He still doesn't give up, even though he can see that with the added time I'm not going to run out as easily, so I don't know what he's hoping for. He moves to c4, he protects his pawn, Kyle is determined, he checks, but everything is under control. Now, we're going to try to win quickly, and we'll win quickly with rook to p2. This rook, because he's going to go to h1, will check, he has to come back, and rook to g2 is mate. Now, it's an unavoidable mate, he can't escape anymore. And now, it's the moment we're going to find out his rating. So he's rated 1,778. He's been registered on the playing site for 6 years, and has already played 13,686 games. So let's analyze the opening. He starts with knight to c3. So I played the pawn to d5. I play classically. He plays e3, e5, the center, and that's where he gets aggressive. He plays queen to h5. So I want to defend the d5 pawn, but I tell myself that after knight to c6, there will be the bishop check on b5. So I started with queen to d6. The computer indicates that we can leave the d5 pawn undefended. The computer prefers to play bishop to a7. It leaves the d5 pawn hanging and then plays knight to f6. It will try to destabilize the queen later with moves like knight to c6, for example. There will be kingside castling, and it considers that this position is slightly in black's favor. They are a pawn down but have better development, and the queen is exposed to attacks from the black pieces. So that's one way to play, but I didn't want to give up my central pawn like that. Of course, in analysis, it's always easier to sacrifice pieces, but during a game, you're less inclined to give up material. So after queen h5, I played queen d6 to defend. He played knight b5, attacking my queen. So queen e7, I have to defend the e5 pawn and the c7 pawn. He plays knight f3, he's attacking. This time, I can play knight c6 because there's no longer the annoying bishop on b5, and my opponent plays pawn to a3. I didn't really understand. Maybe he was worried about my knight coming to b4. I played knight f6, pushing back his queen, which moves to g5. And here I play h6. At first I thought he was going to go to g3. And if queen to g3, I would have played knight e4 to attack his queen. His queen has only one square, which is to go to h4. And there I would have played g5 because if knight takes, of course, I wouldn't recapture with the pawn, I would lose the rook. I don't want to recapture with the queen because he could trade queens and then fork me with knight takes c7. But I would have recaptured with the knight, also threatening knight f3, the king-queen fork, and the discovered attack of my queen on his queen. But in the position he didn't go to g3, he went to h4. So here I almost made the mistake of playing g6 right away. I wanted to play g6 to put the bishop on g7, but the queen is overloaded, having to defend both the knight and the c7 pawn. So he could have sacrificed his knight on c7 to deflect the queen and then taken revenge on the f6 knight. So in this position, I first played a 6 to push back his knight, and then the pawn to g6. He played before bishop to g7, so I keep developing. He plays b5, I take on b5, he recaptures with the bishop, so he's developing too. He has 4 pieces in play against my 4, but I have the center. Here it bothered me a bit that he could take my knight and ruin my pawn structure, which would have also given him a passed pawn, since the b7 pawn is the only one able to stop the advance of his pawn on a 3. But now I'm looking at the possibilities to attack his queen, because after the move g5, if he plays queen to g3 as in the game, knight to h5 will trap his queen. And now after g5, I'm not afraid of him taking on e5 because I can recapture with the pawn. The bishop defends the rook, which would be attacking his queen. So g5. He retreated his queen to g3, knight to h5 to attack his queen. So it's true that I hadn't seen the counterattack with knight takes g5. Luckily for me, he's going to lose material because when I take his queen, I attack his rook. So he takes my queen, I take his rook, and then he takes on c6. He's waiting for me to recapture with the pawn so he can take with the bishop and fork me. And here you need to stay calm, keep your cool, not recapture immediately, and play bishop to d7. And in the end, I'll get my piece back without losing the rook. He takes on e5, I take his bishop. And here another mistake from him. He plays pawn to d3. He wants to block my bishop's diagonal to give his king a path to go after my knight. But then, who is protecting his knight on e5? It's his knight on f3, and I can play g4 without worrying about his knight taking it, since that would allow me to take the rook. So I played g4, and that's exactly what happened. Knight takes, and bishop takes rook. And here king to f1. But now, the material advantage is huge for me. Of course, maybe I could have played better, but the analysis isn't very interesting anymore because I have a lot more material than he does, and there are several ways to convert this advantage into a win. I hope this game was fun, entertaining, and instructive, and I hope we'll meet again for new videos. You can leave likes, comments, share the video, and support the channel. We'll meet again soon for new adventures on the chessboard. Goodbye, everyone.